Your room is dim, your phone lighting your face in short flashes. You didn't plan to order anything tonight. You told yourself that hours ago, but now you're staring at a food delivery app, scrolling past meals you've already had this week. The prices feel normal. Not cheap, not expensive, just in that quiet middle where nothing feels worth thinking too hard about. You pause on one item. It's 12% more than last month. You notice it, then you don't. Your thumb moves anyway. Tap, confirm, done in 6 seconds. The strange part isn't that you ordered, it's that it never felt like a decision. You didn't check your balance. You didn't compare options. You didn't even ask if you were actually hungry. It just fit. Like the price was already aligned with something in you, close enough to acceptable that your brain didn't push back. And it keeps happening, not just with food. Subscriptions you barely touch, ride fares that inch up, a slightly better version that costs just enough more to feel like an upgrade, not a mistake. On their own, none of these feel wrong. Stack them together and it starts to look deliberate. I'm Damon. I pay attention to small numbers people scroll past, mostly because they tend to turn into something bigger than they should. And there's a pattern here that doesn't feel accidental. It's like your environment is tuned to sit just above your comfort line. Not high enough to trigger alarm, not low enough to feel like a win. Just slightly out of reach, but close enough to grab. There's an invisible equation running in the background. You can't see it written anywhere, but you feel it every time you think, it's not that bad. Look at your day, not the big purchases, the small ones that never get reviewed. You wake up a little tired, skip making coffee, order one instead. A few extra dollars for 10 minutes, feels efficient. By afternoon, you're drained, so you pick convenience again. A ride instead of a bus. A snack instead of waiting. By night, your resistance is lower than it was in the morning, so you choose speed over cost, comfort over patience. Each decision makes sense on its own, but none of them exist on their own. There's a cost to deciding when you're tired, a real one. You don't see it because it never shows up as a single charge. It leaks, quietly, across dozens of moments where your brain defaults to easier. And easier almost always costs a little more. Not dramatically, just enough. That's the detail that matters. It's never too expensive, it's always slightly more than it should be. Look at your subscriptions, not the obvious ones, the ones you forgot about, the ones that renewed while you were busy, each one small enough to ignore. But together, they form a baseline, a monthly cost that quietly shifts what normal spending feels like. Now everything else adjusts around that. Prices that would have felt high a year ago now feel standard. Your baseline moved, not because you chose it, because it was nudged. And then there's the upgrade trap. You don't pick the cheapest option. You don't go for the most expensive either. You land in the middle, the smart choice, the one that feels reasonable. But that middle isn't neutral. It's designed, positioned just above what you'd pick if you were fully aware. Anchored by a higher price you'd never touch, so everything below it feels acceptable by comparison. You think you're avoiding overspending, but you're being guided into a slightly higher lane. Every time. The trade-offs don't show up until you add time. That extra $5 today doesn't feel like time lost. But it is. It's a fraction of your effort, traded for convenience. And you keep trading. Small pieces over and over until entire hours of your life are gone, spent on decisions you don't even remember making. That's the part you don't see on the screen, not the price, the accumulation. Because this isn't just about money, it's about how your sense of normal shifts without you noticing, how your tolerance moves, how things that once felt optional start to feel necessary, and once they feel necessary, you stop questioning them. That's where it gets harder to see. Because now it's not about what things cost. It's about what you've accepted they should cost. And that acceptance isn't random. It's shaped, gradually, repeatedly, until your idea of a reasonable price starts to look a lot like someone else's target. Someone slightly above you, close enough to keep up, far enough that you never quite catch up. And the uncomfortable part is, the system doesn't need you to fail. It just needs you to keep adjusting. Because as long as you keep saying it's not that bad, you'll never stop to ask why everything lands right there. What's happening here isn't just prices rising or you being a little more impulsive at night. It's a feedback system. Not the kind you see, the kind that watches. Every tap, every hesitation, every time you almost close the app but don't, it gets recorded. Not as a story, but as data. Small signals about your tolerance. How far a number can move before you react. How long you hover before accepting. How often you come back after saying no. And then it adjusts. There's a concept in behavioral economics called price elasticity. On paper, it's simple. How sensitive people are to price changes. But this isn't measured in surveys anymore. It's measured in real time, by you. You're not just experiencing prices, you're training them. When you accept that 12% increase without friction, the system doesn't read that as okay. It reads it as safe. A boundary that can be pushed again later. Not all at once, never all at once, just enough that your brain keeps labeling it as familiar. Familiar is the key. Your brain isn't trying to find the cheapest option. It's trying to avoid disruption. Anything within the range of what you've recently accepted gets a kind of silent approval. No alarm, no pause, just continuation. So the system doesn't need to guess what you'll tolerate. It learns. And once it learns, it starts guiding you there before you realize you've moved. This is the part people don't like, because it means the line you think you're holding isn't fixed. It moves. And worse, you're the one moving it. Constantly, unconsciously, in moments that feel too small to matter. You think you're resisting big expenses, and maybe you are. You'd notice a sudden jump. You'd question something that felt obviously off. But that's not where this operates. It works in increments beneath your attention, so you stay calm while the baseline shifts. And here's the edge of it. Your reasonable isn't entirely yours anymore. It's been shaped by repeated exposure to slightly higher numbers until they stop feeling high. They become the center. So when you say, this seems fine, you're not judging from where you started. You're judging from where you've been nudged. That gap between where you think you are and where you've been moved is where this lives. Quiet, consistent, profitable. But it doesn't mean you're stuck in it. It means you can't fight it the way you've been trying to. Because this isn't about discipline in the moment. It's about the conditions around the moment. If every decision happens inside an environment tuned to your upper limit, then willpower is like swimming against a current you can't see. You might win a few times, but the direction stays the same. So you change the direction, not by trying harder, by breaking the loop. One way is adding friction where there used to be none, not big barriers. Small interruptions that force awareness back in. Delay a purchase by 10 minutes. Not to cool off, just to break the automatic flow. These systems rely on speed. The faster you decide, the less you notice. Slow it down, and you start to see. Another is separating exposure from action. Right now, they're fused. You see it, and the button is right there. No distance, no space. So create some. Browse without buying. Add things without checking out. Let the number sit without reacting. You'll notice how much of your yes disappears when it's not instant. There's also something more structural. Define your baseline before the system does. Not a strict budget, more like an anchor. A number you decide is normal before you see all the alternatives. Because once you've seen higher prices, your perception shifts up automatically. Setting the anchor first changes the comparison. And then there's a small rule that cuts deeper than it sounds. Treat every recurring cost as permanent unless proven otherwise. Not, I can cancel anytime. Assume it stays. That one shift changes how you evaluate it. Because now it's not a small monthly choice, it's a long-term adjustment to your baseline. And baseline changes are where the real impact hides. None of this is about saying no to everything. It's about noticing where the yes comes from. Because right now, most of your yeses aren't decisions. They're continuations. And once you see that, something shifts. Not in a big way. Just enough that the next time a number shows up, it doesn't slide past as easily. There's a fraction of a second where it feels visible. That's enough. Not control over everything, just visibility over something. Send this to someone who keeps saying it's only a little more, without realizing how often that happens. Sometimes the smallest increases are the ones that move you the farthest.